Most of us don't die suddenly and violently, thanks be to God, but some do. And for anyone who's not familiar with the work that I've been given to do, about once a week, someone comes to me in a dream and they show me their violent death. A lot of automobile crashes and then drownings and shootings and stabbings, different kinds of things. But they're all people who are being helped on the other side, and they're progressing to a point where they don't need this kind of therapeutic level any longer.
Father Nathan Castle, welcome back to Passion Harvest. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Great to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
I mean, the work so powerful and incredible that you do with helping souls transition. But I would love to start for the audience. What happens when we die, when we leave our physical body?
Well, I deal with a little population that died extraordinarily. Most of us don't die suddenly and violently, thanks be to God, but some do. And for anyone who's not familiar with the work that I've been given to do, about once a week, someone comes to me in a dream, and there's people I don't know, and they show me their violent death. That's the most common thing. Although it's buffered, so I'm not waking up screaming. They're gently doing the best they can to show me how they died. Most of the time it's that. Once in a while, somebody in your audience might be familiar with the idea if someone has a trauma during their life from which they don't really fully recover, and they just sort of stagger or do the best they can to move through the remainder of their life, but bring with them the unresolved trauma. So sometimes I get that, but most of the time it's people that died suddenly. A lot of automobile crashes and then drownings and shootings and stabbings, different kinds of things. But they're all people who are being helped on the other side, and they're progressing to a point where they don't need this kind of therapeutic level any longer. Uh, I think of my partners and I as the discharge staff in some sort of medical uh, clinic or spa or something where you don't need to be here any longer because you're healthy enough to go on to better things. That's what we do.
So lots of questions after that, but so for those that potentially die sudden deaths, suicide, automobile accidents,
Yes.
drownings,
Mhm.
they come to you and what they come to, I mean, I don't even know if you ever sleep, but
I
what,
do.
okay. And so what do you, how do you assist them?
Well, at first I receive the dream. I make a distinction between having a dream or receiving a dream. Having a dream for me is my own psychobabble, the kind of normal stuff that most of us are doing in our sleep, whatever it is our dreams actually accomplish. They seem to have some sort of sorting function. I don't know. But anyway, we dream about yesterday or something in our lives. Then there are these other dreams that are not about my material at all. They're other. And I've never driven off a cliff. Why am I dreaming about flying off a cliff? Uh, so I receive a dream that somebody else is giving me. I write it down in a journal I keep on the nightstand, and I say a prayer for them, and then I go back to sleep. And then I arrange times with prayer partners. During the pandemic, it shifted from being in person to being online because everything had to be during the pandemic. So now I have, well, for example, I have tomorrow morning a 2 hour appointment first thing in the morning with two of my prayer partners that live on opposite ends of North America. But we'll be together on Zoom and we'll go into prayer and we'll help. We can usually, it takes about 40 minutes, 45 minutes to accomplish one crossing, and then we take a little break and go on to another one. That's kind of our format.
And so when you do this for the 45 minutes, are you visualizing them crossing over into the light? I'm not going to answer your questions, but what happens? I understand you're praying, but are you,
First, we go into what I call protected prayer. I believe that people are good, but not everyone is safe company. I believe we're all well made, but not everyone is safe company. I don't pick up hitchhikers on this plane or on any other plane. So I first we pray. I'm a Catholic Christian, so we pray to Saint Michael the Archangel. We pray to Mary, the Mother of Jesus, Saint Dominic, the patron of the order that I belong to. Uh, a number of them. We surround ourselves with probably about 20 different people by name, all of the who are kind of uh, great heroes in the light, just to make sure that we're kept safe. And then I read quietly the dream that I wrote down. We go and we're still, and then I read it a second time. There's a Catholic prayer practice called Lectio Divina. It's just divine reading. So when you take for example, a piece of one of the Gospels that might be a paragraph long, and read it slowly, and then be still, and then for the mind, just the data, and then you read it a second time for the heart and the emotions that it might stir. So just a little brief contemplative practice. So I read the story twice, once for the mind and once for the heart. And then we move into prayer and say, we're here available. We're ready to help the person who brought this story. I've developed the habit of calling upon their guardian angel. People from other traditions might call those helpers uh, spirit beings or spirit guides or whatever. I just use the language of guardian angel. And we ask for clarity because dreams have a kind of an indistinctness that is native to them sometimes. Dreams can have symbolic language that you might not be clear on. Or, for example, there might be a crowd scene as at the beginning of a movie. In the first 2 minutes of a movie, you might be in a crowd and you don't know exactly who you're to care about yet because the movie hasn't yet told you who the protagonist is until the camera zooms in. And now you understand that this person is important and you need to pay attention to what they're saying. So sometimes we need a little bit of clarity from the guardians about who we're helping. And for example, someone might show me that they died behind the wheel of a vehicle, but they didn't tell me their gender. Well, I'd like to know whether I'm talking to a man or a woman. You're in France right now, and I'm in the United States, and
Yes.
sometimes I feel like I'm in a country not my own, and I'd kind of like to know that. It just helps me orient myself to time and space. So we deal with the guardians a little bit. They're very sweet. They're always truthful and kind. The angels don't use language to communicate with each other, but they know that it's important to use it when we're involved. So they very often will take something like a nickname. Recently, for example, there was a dream of an elderly man who had a cognitive um, uh, problem while he was driving. He hardly ever drove outside of his neighborhood and he was on a familiar street, but there was a street there and there was a barricade and people in the street, but he had some sort of episode where he didn't understand clearly what was going on and he drove right into the crowd. Well, the Guardian was saying, well, all of us were saying the same thing at the same time to the ones we guarded. Look out. And so he took the name Luke because it sounded like the word look. Um, so they'll just do something kind of clever like that. And then they'll explain the question, anything that they think that might help us do our work. And speaking to them functions as a sort of a microphone test. Most people have never used another human voice to speak before. It's the first time they're doing this. And so have their guardian models how easy it is while they watch, and then the person will come on and say hello.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, okay, I'm talking humanness. You're communicating telepathically, or you're
I suppose.
speaking out loud.
Well, when I give my voiceover, the angel, the guardian will speak through me, and then later the person who we're helping will speak through. It's as though my voice is at the podium or the microphone, and I just step to the side, and the other person speaks through. So I
Like a
try to make
channel of sorts.
except I don't use that word because in the Catholic Church it's radioactive and upsets people. But
Okay, sorry.
there's nothing really wrong with it in that. For example, I live near the Mexican border, and in Spanish, the word for channel on a television is canal,
Okay.
which is in common English is not used to talk about television stations. It's used to talk about water inside a ditch.
Waterways. Well, I guess, well, let's say flowing energy. Well, we could
Yeah,
call it
exactly. So
that.
it's flowing energy. So I don't use the word channel, not because it's a bad word, but it's just problematic in my church. So I prefer to think of it as the gift of prophecy. Prophetos means to allow to speak. And so, but however you want to think of it, I believe my voice is consecrated. And I don't believe I'm doing anything unholy. I'm just letting somebody use a voice for a minute that needs one.
Mm. And again, going backtracking, I think it's important and great that you protect yourself and connect only with beings of light. I love how you said you don't pick up hitchhikers.
Yes. It's, you can still have a positive worldview about people. Uh, Parents of children have to teach them to be trusting of others, and they have to teach them about stranger danger,
Mm.
both. Uh, but you don't need to frighten a child that every last person they'll see is probably up to no good. It's the other
Yeah,
way
I
around.
guess it's just an awareness that that's out there in somewhere.
Yes, and it's just important to stay in the truth and to be surrounded by
In
persons who want to.
safety.
Yes, exactly.
So the guardian angels, okay, do you see them with your physical eyes or you see them in your mind's eye? And what do they
No,
feel like?
it's
That's two
up
questions.
of the five senses. It, touch is first, and sound would be second. Um, so touch, there's lots of ways that touch can operate, but one of them is energetic, and I can usually feel them. Looking at I'm if for anybody that's listening to this and not viewing it, I'm touching the area above my heart and my left shoulder or my neck. I can feel them in there, and it's just a gentle, uh, energetic nudge, uh, and then they don't have gender natively. They don't have DNA or genitals that distinguish one gender from the next, but they know that that's what we're used to, gendered personhood, and so they pick one. They pick the one that they think is the more appropriate, the closer fit.
And obviously, even if you meet people, they have a different feeling. Do they feel like love and light and how
They do, and then
hard to
they have
describe in words?
well, sometimes it's scale. Like once in a while, I'll get one that feels enormously powerful. Like think of electricity. If you're right next to the generating station, the power lines that carry the power from that generating station are much larger than the plug in your kitchen. You know, we don't want to ruin your toaster or your hair dryer. That energy has to be reduced and reduced until it's at the appropriate level. And so they can do that too. Uh, they can power down to make sure that they don't overwhelm me. But sometimes their scale is different. Yeah.
Interesting.
They're
So,
always loving. They always tell the truth. And they can be funny. They can be they're persons. They're angelic persons, not human persons, but they're persons. And they're as different as human persons are from one another. Some are quite serious and sober and businesslike at their task. Some are playful and energetic. They're all happy because this is a graduation day for the one they love.
right.
Uh, but still, you could be in a crowd at a graduation and find very different kinds of people celebrating a very similar event.
And it's my understanding that angels, guardian angels, have not had a human incarnation.
No, they haven't. They're um, at least in the cosmology that I've been taught, I will always be a human, whether I'm in the body or out of it. I won't become an angel or become an elephant. I'm going to be human because I was created to be human, and I believe the angels are what I've been taught anyway, is that they've always been personal beings, but they're not native to Earth, and they're not material. They can materialize if they have a reason, and that's
in a
usually
physical form.
they can manifest in a physical form briefly for a purpose, but that's not their native way of being.
So it's your belief, whether it's reincarnation, incarnation, or just life in humanness, some people say we move up levels to angels or other things. It's not your belief that that is the case.
I believe that you and I can evolve into higher, sometimes it's called vibration, higher levels of being a human, but I don't think that I don't believe my humanness is something that I will ever leave behind because I outgrew it and became some other kind of
Okay.
thing. I believe that I will be more and more whole. In fact, the word holy is from the word whole. And so sometimes we can feel fragmented or brokenhearted, where we feel like we're in pieces, uh, or sometimes we just have experiences where we feel complete. And so anyway, some sort of growth in wholeness is, I think, the way I look at it.
I'm sure everyone that's listening to this is felt all of the above. The suffering is, many people ask me this, they probably ask you as well, is there an end to this reincarnation trap, the cycle of the humanness experience?
Well, I believe I follow the teaching that I've been given. And for me, I don't believe I've had past lives or that I will have other lives that are not me, that are not Nathan. But that I'm around a lot of people who do believe that, and I listen respectfully. And my stories are so outrageous that people can roll their eyes and think I'm a nut. And I try to listen respectfully to what other people believe is true and listen to their reasons for how they formed their thinking. But no, I believe that I'm going to continue to be me, and I'll grow into ways that are just more whole.
In this, what we term as from birth to death in our lifetime.
Yes, and then afterwards, because I do believe I will be me after I die. I'll won't have this body any longer, but I'll have some kind of a body. And I deal with people that talk about their embodiedness, they're out of their the afterlife form, and they have to learn things. They have to learn how to be well. For example, a person could die while they're young, while they're a child. Do they have to stay a child for all eternity because they died as a child? That's not what I've seen. They have the opportunity to mature and grow in a next plane, or they can sometimes go back and forth. One thing people will do is if you're a can you think of somebody that you loved who died while an old person,
Yes.
a grandparent or a great
Mother,
grandparent or
yes.
yeah. She might, if she wanted to make herself known to you, she might first show you the way she looked the last time you saw her, or at least in a healthy version of her late life self. But then that doesn't mean she has to be that anymore. She
Mm.
can revert to another time in her life where she might have been in her 30s. Very, very often in our homes, on the wall, there's a picture of family members on their wedding day or in their military uniform, but they lived another 50 years after that. But sometimes they'll show that very familiar uh, version of themselves just to establish their identity, and then they'll morph into something else.
And it's interesting, when I feel perhaps she's close, or it's almost not something I see, it's almost a memory, a feeling more than anything. Well, that's how it works for me.
Mhm.
A sense.
Yes.
Why are souls stuck?
Well, I've written three of these books. Some of
A
your
big
audience,
congratulations on your new book as well.
yes, it just came out a couple of months ago. It's just making its way in the world. The audiobook is almost finished. A lot of people enjoy listening to these books rather than reading them. Um, I think I lost my train of thought. Would you ask me your question again?
How can one get stuck? How can
Yes.
souls get
But
stuck?
in the first book, I thought I use the image of a vehicle that can't get traction, that's gone onto the ditch in the mud or the snow or something and is spinning. And are you familiar with post-traumatic stress, PTSD, and how sometimes people can have had an experience that was appalling and awful or violent, and it might have happened years ago, but they relive it in ways they wish they didn't have to. A lot of people with PTSD don't like sleeping because in wakefulness they can at least turn their thoughts away from something else, but when they're unconscious, they just come back with full force. I originally thought that the people that I was dealing with were all stuck because of their trauma, and some were, but not others. Some of them just needed a therapeutic level in the afterlife because they left here so suddenly and violently. When we go to a funeral, you must have heard some eulogists or people, commiserating over the death of a loved one that, well, now mama's up there with dad, or dad is playing poker with his buddies, or out on the golf course in heaven or something like that. Very often people want there to be new joys in the lives of someone who has died, but sometimes they're not ready for that because they just got shot.
Right.
They don't want to play poker. They don't want to have family reunions. They have to make sense of the fact that they were just alive a moment ago and dead, and they have to acclimate. And so sometimes they're not really stuck. They're just getting the help they need in an environment that provides what they need.
Yeah, almost
And then
like
they gradually
going
become
on
a
a holiday and just healing from certain situations.
Yes, but it's not exactly a holiday where you go off by yourself because you need helpers.
Mm.
So it's more like a grand spa, you know, the kind of, especially the kind of places that here only the rich can go to, you know,
Right. And apparently they have your telephone number.
something like that. They know how to reach. But one man was from either Bolivia or Colombia, somewhere in that part of South America, and he died a poor man, and then awakened into an afterlife clinic, and he thought he must be rich because there were clean sheets and there was ample food and attentive caregivers. And he just thought, I would never have been able to afford this kind of care where I came from. And he had to get used to the idea, oh, he had died, and now here he's not poor anymore. But he needed help.
That's
And the help
lovely.
that he
Yeah.
got came in the form of this very well equipped spa where he got the help he needed.
That's lovely. Okay, a hard question, but I get this asked this as well. Why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, I don't know is the most truthful answer. I understood. Do you remember at what age you knew that you would die?
In this life?
Yes, like as a child.
Do you
When
mean
did
the age that I would die or just that I would
No,
actually
no, no.
die?
Did you know that you were a person who would one day die,
No, I don't
or that?
remember. But that's an excellent question. You should be the interviewer. No, excellent question. I
Well, I
know
guess
what
I am in.
around what year I'll die, but no, that's different.
That's a different question. No, I'm
Not for a
asking, did you
while.
ever see
Uh,
a dead bird on the sidewalk, or did you have a pet
uh,
that you in the yard, or did you have a neighbor or a loved one die and go to a funeral?
Interesting question. No, I've never really been afraid of death. I don't want to die a bad death, but I don't know. It's not,
Well, I wasn't even presuming that you would be afraid. Just when did you know that there would be a death, that you would die?
I can't
Anyway,
remember.
okay, that's fair. Well, anyway, you asked me about bad things happening to good people, and the bad thing that happens to everybody is they die. To mortals, that comes to everyone. I just remember believing that. Well, first thing, I'm a Christian, and so I'm a Catholic, and I grew up around crucifixes with a gruesome death depicted on it, and being taught that it doesn't matter what bad thing happens to you, Good Friday turns into Easter morning. Whatever bad thing happens, you can move through it with the help of the Holy Spirit, and uh, it will turn.
So the
I would probably,
resurrection, it's almost, yes, it's not
yes,
really the end. It's not really the end.
yes, and that light day follows night, that both belong. This life is not to be the constant avoidance of pain. There's pain comes and has its place. Just don't let it take over. You know,
Mm.
there's always a blend of what you might think of as positive or negative, good or bad, light or dark, any of that stuff. And I just try to stay in the present moment. And in Christian language, we the Lord's Prayer, in it we ask for our daily bread. We don't ask for a bakery or a lifetime supply of bread. We just ask for what we need in the day,
Right now.
and we ask that we be fed it. You know,
And interesting, like the power of prayer, whatever faith one may be that's listening to this, it really brings you into the present moment, the awareness, the consciousness of now.
it can, unless you're primarily praying for future things.
Right.
It's
Yes.
not to bring one's prayer and fill it full of worry, especially right before sleep. I don't do very much prayer right before sleep about tomorrow, um, because that doesn't help me fall asleep. I try to be grateful for the passing day and be grateful for anything that I can get that I think of, and then I just ask to go to sleep. And tomorrow I can pray about tomorrow. I try not to fill today with too much of tomorrow.
Yeah. Gratitude is so powerful. Thank you. So,
Yes, it,
so just a couple more questions. I know you're tired. We're both tired today. Um, what's your advice for the audience to connect with their guardian angels?
good question. Some stillness, to be sure. Today, as we're recording this, it's the second day of Lent. Ash Wednesday was yesterday, and I was preaching to college students yesterday. And Catholic people want to give up something for Lent. And I said one of the things that I enjoy doing living here on campus is playing the in the United States. We have 50 states, and when you're in a car on a trip, one thing to do is look at the license plates of all the other cars on the road and see how many states you can find. Some car from some faraway part of the country, uh, and count them. We used to play a game about different kinds of cars and what color they were, different things like that. I said one of the things I enjoy doing here is watching students walk down the sidewalk and see if I can find one that's not looking at their phone.
God, the phone, I know. Anywhere.
Because there's hardly anybody walking down a sidewalk who's not looking at their phone. You have to be careful in the neighborhood because they'll walk right in front of your car. They're just not paying any
It's a
attention
different
to
world,
where they are.
yes.
And so um, I try to say to them, if you want to know your guardian angel, one thing would help is to put your phone down, put it in the other room, um, be still, and go inside yourself and say hello, because your guardian is there already, and they'll hear everything that you say out loud. They know how you're dressed. They're like a Secret Service agent whose job is to guard you, so they can hear everything that you say aloud and see everything that anyone in the room could see. They won't read your mind because it's rude. You're entitled to your private thoughts. But if you want them to come into your thinking, if you're trying to make a decision and you're perplexed, you can say to your guardian, "Hey, guardian, would you please come inside my thought process because I'd like some advice if you're able to give it." Um, and then you won't necessarily hear a voice, but a train of thought might begin to form that's inside you that might lead you to a different conclusion.
Would that thought feel good and positive?
Yes, yes, and they will be. Well, you've probably given advice to people, haven't you?
I have. But it's your show
Um,
today.
yes, okay. I'm also a podcaster, and so I often I have people on my show where I interview them. Um, when people ask us for advice, we can just jump in with both feet and start telling them how to live their life. Um, I'm so happy you asked, Lisa. And now listen carefully because you should do these 10 things. Or you could engage them in a little more heartfelt dialogue and say, well, what would you think about this?
Mm.
And then be still. What about that? There's different ways that advice might be given, and the guardians try to be good coaches, not so much bosses.
Thank you.
And they can
Sorry.
steer us away from what's not good for us. They also get to know our bad habits, and so they can cause us to reflect on it would really be good if you did less of that, you know. And they could work in your conscience and say, as much as you're attracted to this thing, think of what it produces. It always makes you sad or angry or arrogant or something when you do that. Maybe you'd like to do less of that.
And just even the way you're speaking, it's that gentle. It's not forceful.
It's no, it's gentle. They don't force it all. In fact, one of the things that the people that my partners and I deal with, one of the things they enjoy most in their afterlife world is the absence of bossy judgment.
Mm.
Um, and agency, the idea that I'm in charge of me and my thoughts and my feelings, because a lot of people have been victimized by someone who overstepped, uh, especially younger people,
Yeah.
where somebody abused them while thinking that they had every right to do that. And so a lot of the people that we deal with, they're working through trauma, and sometimes they've part of the trauma is they had something stolen from them, maybe even their life. They might have been murdered, or they ended up in pain that moved them towards drug abuse and addiction issues. And uh, the voices in one's head and addiction are very, very controlling. People who live with addiction have lots of like sometimes they're called inner demons that tell them what they have to do. And I just have seen it over and over where the people that we deal with in this realm are grateful that they're being led through processes, but they're always in charge of what the process is.
So we have
They
our own
never
free will as well.
precisely. And when I look at humanity, the most degraded forms of human personhood on the earth are wherever you find degradation of a person, you find some sort of domination, some sort of external force that holds a person down. Or maybe they even interiorize it and think they deserve being held down. Uh, and the opposite of that is what I've dealt with people just seeing. And the helpers are very gentle in helping them along. And one thing that has to do with pace, but uh, do you need to heal quickly or slowly? Well, it's up to you. It's really more of a Montessori school than a strict classroom where everybody is held to the same standard all the time. You're respected for your own uniqueness and your own pace at which you want to work.
Wow, profound insights about domination and addiction. That's incredible. Two more questions, and then I'll move on. Um, if someone would like to communicate with their loved ones in the afterlife, what's your advice?
Well, first listen, and try to create some listening space, some place where, again, where the technology goes away. There's no media feeding filling the airwaves in your head and your in your house. Put the technology down. Sometimes it's helpful to create a sensory place where it smells good. So flowers, incense. I like to light a candle and then I close my eyes, which makes no sense at all. But I have a sense of there being a flame near me that I find helpful. Um, it's good if you can be in a place that's quiet. Um, and then go into one's heart of hearts. I'm a Catholic Christian. My mom taught me when I was like 3 how to make the sign of the cross, how to touch your forehead, your heart, and draw a line shoulder to shoulder across your body, trying to bring mind, heart, and body all together. And then she taught me that X marks the spot where the buried treasure is. And like in pirate stories, the little dotted line on the island with the X.
The
That
map, yes,
yeah, the map, the treasure is inside you. That's why you can't
yes.
see it because it's buried. Your eyes look out, but if you close your eyes and look in, you can see the treasure. It's inside you. So I would say to people, go inside yourself, and you don't have to be a Catholic or a Christian necessarily to borrow that little practice. You can just say, I want my body, mind, and spirit all one, and I want to be inside myself with the one who created me. If you can posit some kind of belief in a higher power or God, most people who believe in a God believe that that God is everywhere. Well, I just asked yesterday, how much do you weigh? You know, is the space inside you where your liver is, your bones, your muscles? Is that a place? Of course it is. It's a place. It's inside you. Well, God, if God lives there, just go in there. You don't need to talk to the furthest star. You can talk to God who is within, and then just be still, and then say, "Mom, I want to talk to you." Uh, it's easier to send than it is to receive. But if you form a thought that I would call a prayer that you direct to a loved one who has died, they will hear it. Most of the time they hear it in real time when you say it. Sometimes they're indisposed. You know, they can rest or they can be, but they'll get the message. It's almost like when you visit someone in the hospital, but they were asleep when you came.
Right.
You didn't want to wake them.
Yes, no, that was beautiful. Thank you. And in regards to prayers, it's not necessarily the words we say. Is there a specific prayer that one could
No, it's not.
use?
It's not. It doesn't have to be formulaic prayers, memorized prayers. Just heart speech. Hello, I'm thinking of you, and I'm remembering a happy time with you, or I'm grateful for this thing that this attribute that I have that I know you put there. I know that I am this way because you formed me this way. Um, I want to. Uh, um, do you? I sometimes send people loving energy as a resource. Uh, when we use, for example, one of the words we use to describe money is currency, from the word current. Uh, Something that connects us, a current between my heart and the heart of a loved one who's died. And I'll send them a blessing that I think of as a resource that can help them buy something, if you will. Can help them have power or range somehow. Uh, I frequently bless people that have died, and or tell them I love them, and I hope that my love for them is not just a passing emotion, but is some sort of currency, some sort of energy that enables them to do something that they might not have been able to do otherwise.
Beautiful. Well, I'm absolutely sure it is. For those of the audience that are listening to this that have lost a loved one in a sudden death or other and feel that their loved ones may be stuck, how can they assist them? What's your advice?
First of all, check your work and don't presume the worst. Don't presume that someone is stuck because you think they're stuck. Um, check your work. They might not be. Uh, 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 Another thing would be we are not responsible for the outcome of another person's life. Even parents. Parents are often heartbroken that their children had, you know, uh, addiction issues or uh, brokenheartedness or something. We're not in charge of the outcomes of other people's lives. So take yourself off the hook. It's not your fault, or it's not your responsibility. You can love without uh, choosing a preferred outcome for somebody else. So don't presume they're stuck. Just love them and try to love them into a higher state if they're open to that. I don't know. I just love, and then don't pay too much attention to these things at the expense of people who are here around you. Grief can sometimes, I was talking about domination. Grief can be very bossy. Um, Grief can bring on heartbreak, and it can close one off and move toward depression. And after a while, you're so preoccupied with your own inner sorrow that you don't even notice the neighbor, um, or the person at the grocery store. It's important to try to stay in the present moment. So have a discipline where you pray for the person who has died, but don't let that be all day long. They have other things to do besides listen to you, and you have other things besides focusing on them morning, noon, and night is just important. Especially one thing is about loving, I think, is if you've loved and lost, well, at least you learned how to love.
Yeah.
And if you've
Love, the
loved,
most powerful thing in the universe.
absolutely it is. I think the universe is made of love. And you can thank a person who has loved you, who has died, and you can miss them and tell them so. But then you can say, help me love the next person. Help me love the unloved, or help me grow in love. I don't want my loving to be cut off because you died. I want my loving to continue to grow. Help me do that somehow.
Thank you. Father Nathan, a big congratulations on your book. Please let me explain. What's it about
Yeah.
for the audience? And I will leave a
Well,
link below in the show notes.
yeah, well, it's the third of three. And in the first one, we called it Helping Stuck Souls Crossover because, as I mentioned, I thought that most of them were spinning. The deeper I got into it over the years, this has been about 27 years of my life, not just the last five when the books have come out. Uh, we learned that not all were stuck, so we got rid of the word stuck and crossed through it in the cover. This one, we the subtitle is Please Let Me Explain, because sometimes in the course of helping a person do this crossing, they just explain their circumstance with such clarity. And my prayer partners and I end up going, wow, I never thought of that. No, I didn't know that was possible. Um, and there's just the multiplicity of forms in the created world that we can get used to thinking that things are the way we think they are, and then we come across some little animal or some flower or something that's in the created world that we didn't even know was there and hadn't any idea that that could be. So there are all the stories in the new book, there are 13 of them. The people that are in them bring us something new. And so that was the rubric to pull this book together.
Congratulations. So, transition souls that you have assisted in crossing over that have told their
Yes, in the last
stories.
couple of years. There were so many of them. I think I've got going on 600 now. But
Gosh,
so choosing 13 of them to put in a book already was funny because when I started writing, I thought a dozen would be just the perfect, kind of like round biblical number. And and then it ended up being 13 all the time. Do you speak French? You live in France, right?
I do. My French is not that great, but it's passable.
You know the word lagniappe?
No.
I'm from New Orleans, or my mother's side of the family is, and lagniappe in at least French Cajun New Orleans means a little something extra.
Oh, no, I
And
haven't heard
little
that word.
shop owners in New Orleans, if you have a little bakery, you don't you and a person wants a dozen donuts, you give them the dozen donuts and lagniappe, which is one more.
Oh, okay. So
So you give them
hence
13.
13.
Yes. The newspaper in New Orleans has one of those special sections about concerts and things to do around town, and it's called Lagniappe, a little something extra. But
Fantastic.
here's a little something extra happening around town that you might enjoy.
I'm gonna look up that word.
Yeah.
Father Nathan, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Via my website, which is nathan-castle.com. One thing I do ask is that if people email me with questions about the work that I do or afterlife issues, please first read at least one of the books. It's just too exhausting to try to say what I've already said to people who could access it by uh, purchasing a pretty inexpensive book. But if after you've done that, if you have a question that I might be able to address, I'll try to do it.
I'm sure you receive a lot of emails.
More than ever, and now I'm having to adapt to how many I can answer and how. I prefer to do it on the phone, except you're in France.
Yes.
So time zones and international calling, I don't really want to do a lot of that. But I try to at least reply to people and do the best I can.
Yes. Well, Father Nathan, I mean, the work you're doing is so incredible. You never even searched out for this, but they kind of got your number.
Well, I
Is
started in childhood. I was praying for people that had died really, really young because I was
yeah.
taught to. And so it's just grown as I've gotten older.
Well, I want to say thank you on behalf of the collective consciousness. Is there anything on a final note like you would like to share with the Passion Harvest audience?
Oh, just a blessing, I suppose, which I think is just love flowing between people. So thank you for paying attention to all that you offer the world, and blessings to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. If you liked this episode, please do subscribe.